The latest 2023 zombie series The Walking Dead, Dead City has made a stunning debut. No more words, folks. Let's get on board. In the late afternoon, just outside Manhattan at 3 o'clock, Maggie was observing everything within the city through her binoculars. This once bustling and vibrant city now lay in ruins, with towering skyscrapers resembling a post-apocalyptic wasteland. There was no sign of human life, replaced instead by a horde of grotesque zombies. Maggie felt a growing sense of anxiety as she surveyed the scene before her. She picked up the map she carried with her and compared her current location to her destination. Once again sinking into despair, going to the city center on her own seemed like an impossible task. Just then, the low growl of zombies reached Maggie's ears. She quickly hid, fortunate that the approaching zombies hadn't noticed her. However, just as she was about to breathe a sigh of relief, a zombie suddenly grabbed Maggie's leg, pulling her out from her hiding spot. In her moment of peril, Maggie grabbed a nearby pair of binoculars and smashed them against the zombie's head, resolving the immediate crisis. But Maggie didn't stop there, even though the zombie's head had already been thoroughly crushed. Maggie released the pent-up suffering within her in a near frenzy of emotion. This scene easily brought to mind that small forest and that late night. However, amid the sadness, she had to return to reality. Maggie had to continue her journey. After leaving the seaside, Maggie arrived at a roadside motel. After a heartfelt conversation with the bartender, she managed to extract some information. The person she was looking for was inside the motel. Maggie hurried to the door, and at that moment, she heard the sound of someone showering from inside. Maggie gently pushed open the door, revealing a dagger and a familiar bracelet on the table. It seemed she had found the right place. Maggie picked up the dagger and prepared to move forward, but an unexpected event occurred. The bar's gang members suddenly tied Maggie up, mistaking her for a spy from a rival gang. Just as the women were about to attack, Maggie, calm under pressure, used a few quick moves to defuse the situation. Just then, Negan suddenly burst into the bar. The reunion between acquaintances was particularly warm. Negan immediately made his exit, and Maggie quickly followed. As Negan ran further away, Maggie swiftly started the car. However, the people from the bar suddenly appeared, and in the midst of the ensuing struggle, her notebook with the map was accidentally lost. After chasing for a while, Maggie finally found Negan on a nearby farm. They started fighting as soon as they saw each other, but Negan was at a disadvantage. Maggie didn't press the issue with Negan. Instead, she handed him a wanted poster. Seeing the police notice, Negan wasn't surprised at all. In fact, he seemed quite pleased with the picture on it, expressing a desire to keep it as a memento. Maggie was at a loss for words. Negan called over a young girl to help tend to his wounds. Maggie was puzzled, as this wasn't Negan's child. She asked Negan about the whereabouts of his wife and child, but he didn't answer. Instead, he briefly introduced the girl as Ginny and then started asking Maggie about her reasons for seeking him out. Maggie candidly revealed that a few weeks ago, a group of thugs had attacked her camp and kidnapped her son, Herschel. The leader of this group was a man named the Croat. Upon hearing this, Negan quickly raised his hands in denial. Maggie knew that Negan understood but was pretending not to. She continued, "When they attacked our camp, the Croat made a distinctive whistle. It's a whistle Negan knows all too well." Unable to conceal the truth any longer, Negan admitted that the Croat had indeed been a member of the Saviors in the past, and he was a deranged lunatic. Negan was perplexed as to why Maggie was so sure he could help her. Maggie responded, "Negan doesn't have much of a choice, because if Maggie can find him, so can the police." It seemed there was no other option, so they hit the road together. Negan had to get Ginny settled first. During their rest, Negan told Maggie about a farm where he had sought refuge not too long ago. Ginny and her father had taken care of him there until one day, her father had gone out in search of supplies and never returned. Ginny found him, but he had turned into a zombie. Witnessing her father become one of the Walking Dead, Ginny had stopped speaking and had since relied on Negan for survival. After hearing this, Maggie fell into deep thought. Soon after, a woman appeared next to her. She was also from the farm, and she usually took good care of the girl. After Negan and Ginny said goodbye to each other, Negan and Maggie set off. What Negan didn't realize was that the Babylonian police, who were looking for him, had already tracked him to the pub. There was no response from the crowd. Pearlie went on to say that Negan was a cold-blooded murderer who would be executed under the new Babylonian code. Not just execution, but Negan's heinous acts warranted hanging or beheading. Pearlie presented the wanted poster to the woman from the bar again, but she claimed not to have seen Negan. Pearlie quickly lost his patience and forced the woman outside into the square, which was now filled with a horde of zombies. It was clear that she could become a late-night snack for the zombies if she didn't cooperate. The woman eventually tells Pearlie that Negan did work there, but just earlier today he left with someone else. She had no idea who the person was, only that they drove a blue pickup truck. Pearlie released her, seeming to believe what she was saying. However, in the next moment, he abruptly opened the iron gate and informed the woman that anyone who had helped Negan had to die. In an instant, the woman was devoured by the zombies. As they were preparing to leave, Pearlie's attention was drawn to a notebook left behind by Maggie. He studied the location noted in the notebook with a pensive expression. Meanwhile, Negan and Maggie had reached the seaside and decided to take a boat out to sea. Just as Negan was moving a gasoline tank, Pearlie arrived with his group. The locations mentioned in the notebook provided no clues about Maggie and Negan's whereabouts. It's their last stop. Pelletier gets out and inspects it. Jano, another officer, arrived at a nearby forest. However, when he turned around, he saw the blue pickup truck described by the woman from the bar. Jano was about to call for backup when Maggie appeared and restrained him. By the time Pearlie realized what had happened, Maggie had already set sail with the boat, and that's how Negan and Maggie, with their bailiff hostages, crossed the zombie sea and officially stepped into the land of the dead. And what awaits them is an army of tens of thousands of zombies. As soon as they disembarked, they realized something was amiss. All the zombies in the city had mysteriously disappeared without a trace. With no time to ponder this, they needed to find a place to shelter quickly. Negan, however, immediately grabbed Maggie, expressing his desire to have her take care of Ginny once everything was over. The three of them moved cautiously through the city, but an eerie silence prevailed, and the air was thick with a suffocating stench of blood. Jano attempted to flee, but Negan swiftly restrained him.
Desearás que te hubiera arrojado del bote. Si lo vuelves a intentar.
The trio continued their journey towards the smoky skyscraper they had been observing.
¡Por aquí!
Just then, zombies began dropping from the sky one after another, prompting them to seek cover.
Debieron escucharnos.
¿Es en serio? Ahora los errantes caen del...
Unluckily, a store behind them had amassed a large horde of zombies, and the glass doors were about to give way. Maggie signaled to head beneath the scaffolding across the street. More and more zombies descended from above, indicating that the zombies had become aware of their presence. Finally, when all was quiet again, they resumed their journey. The night was proving too perilous for them. While walking, Negan suddenly halted, examining their surroundings. He urgently called out to Maggie, revealing the human-made traps set on the ground. They had no choice but to take a detour. However, they inadvertently reached a dead-end alley. Just then, a car appeared on the road, blaring loud music and bringing along a swarm of zombies. They hastily found cover, but the zombies seemed to sense their presence and rushed toward them. Besides the zombies, a multitude of flying insects emerged from a nearby garbage bag.
No!
Negan bolted, but the zombies were dangerously close. In the critical moment, gunshots rang out. Jano, realizing that their allies were approaching, shouted for help. Negan, convinced that Jano was a fool, grabbed him and headed for a nearby building. They sought refuge in a clothing factory and decided to split up to find a safe way out. At the same time, Pearlie and his companion entered the factory. He knew that Maggie was here and introduced himself as Pearlie, a law enforcement officer from New Babylon. He assured Maggie that he was not her enemy. Maggie, however, remained cautious and did not respond to the supposed friendly gesture. Seeing that Pearlie was closing in, Negan grabbed Jano, intending to change positions. However, Jano was a moment too slow and was tackled by the zombies from behind. In their moment of peril, Negan stepped in to help, but in the next moment, Jano would never have imagined that he was being taken out by his own teammates. Meanwhile, at the other entrance, the zombies had broken through the gate, and the officer guarding it was instantly overwhelmed by the zombies. Pearlie's team was reduced to just him. The gunshot Pearlie had fired had given away his position to Maggie. who had now approached him from behind. Maggie was already behind Pearlie, and Maggie was about to make her move when Pearlie reacted. They grappled with each other, but Maggie was overpowered by Pearlie. Pinned to the ground, her concealed weapons and her shoes were of no use in this dire situation. It was an emergency.
Lo necesito, mi hijo. A mi hijo. Para salvar.
When Pearlie heard this, he pushed even harder. Maggie reached for her necklace and flung it toward Pearlie. Then, she picked up her rifle and struck him unconscious, and then Negan arrived. Looking at Pearlie on the ground, Maggie didn't kill him after all. They quickly fled to another warehouse. Negan lit a match to illuminate the dark space, only to discover that there was someone hidden inside. On the other side of the city, Herschel was being held captive in a dark room. The Croat entered, clearly familiar with Herschel. Herschel's reaction surprised the Croat, but the Croat is no slouch, and not enough fear is often not enough firepower. As he picked up an axe and aimed it at Herschel's legs, Herschel's defenses were beginning to crumble. Just as the Croat was about to proceed with his next move, a knocking sound came from outside the door. Outside, a wounded man was making his escape. The Croat was unhurriedly approaching the man. He picked up a pulley system and reached the rooftop. The Croat, however, remained unfazed. In this dead city, such dramatic performances were often required.
Nuevo récord, ¿no? 20 pisos!
Negan and Maggie are surrounded by zombies in the building. A woman has appeared and taken Maggie's supplies, so they have no choice but to follow her. They climb up the dimly lit lift shaft, and if they're not careful, they'll fall to the bottom. Even if they don't die, they're greeted by zombies at the bottom, but despite the risks, they manage to make it through. Upon reaching the rooftop, the woman slid down a cable to the opposite side, signaling for them to follow. Maggie was a bit squeamish.
Después de ti.
Negan slipped through first. As the zombies approached, Maggie grabbed the pulley and prepared to slide across, but then the sound of music suddenly appeared from below. A moment's distraction caused Maggie to lose her grip on the rope and she couldn't make it to the other side. Fortunately, the horde of zombies below was drawn away by the music truck. With a final burst of effort, Maggie successfully reached the other side. At this point, they encountered Esther, who had taken Maggie's belongings. Surprisingly, she didn't flee and instead offered pigeon meat as a trade. It became apparent that Esther wasn't a threat. Negan cautiously asked if she could guide them to their destination, the smoking skyscraper. Though they couldn't understand Esther's language, it was clear that she couldn't help. Esther gestured for them to follow another path, but Maggie remained cautious, suspecting Esther might be affiliated with the Croat. Negan, however, insisted as they had no other options. Zombies and law enforcement officers were trailing them, leaving them no choice but to trust Esther. They follow Esther, but when they reach the lobby, they are suddenly surrounded. But Esther is trying to stop them, and Maggie can see that they're not the Croat's men. Both sides saw room for negotiation. Maggie concocted a lie, claiming they had inadvertently ended up there and intended to gather supplies before leaving peacefully. However, the group was skeptical, having heard similar excuses before. Tommaso confiscated their weapons and backpacks and then led them to a camp where many survivors were present. They were put in the toilets. Maggie tries to escape. She doesn't trust these people. Negan argued that even if they could escape, it would be a fight to the death. If they're not the Croat, then they have something to offer: manpower and information. Negan knows the rules of post-apocalyptic survival, and then he tells Maggie what happened to the Croat. They had crossed paths before, and the Croat was initially taken in by Negan. Together, they ruled the saviors. Maggie likened them to demons drawn to each other, but Negan countered by explaining how the Croat excelled at reading people, manipulating them like a puppet master. If Negan was the ruler, the Croat was Negan's abuser. However, Negan had rules he followed, and then the Croat's behavior got worse and worse, even going after children. This crossed a line for Negan, and he decided to eliminate the Croat. Otherwise, the saviors would lose all sense of order. However, Negan missed and only knocked off one of the Croat's ears. The Croat had escaped and had been missing ever since, until now. Soon, there was commotion outside. Tommaso transferred them to the main hall, where people were hurriedly clearing their belongings. They learned that a gang of marauders was infiltrating the camp. Tommaso suspected Negan and Maggie were spies. Negan wasted no time and used a concealed pigeon bone spike to attack Tommaso. He had been prepared for a potential crisis from the start, ensuring he wouldn't be defenseless in such a situation. Negan's keen insight and strategic thinking were evident, but in the next moment, Negan released Tommaso, leading to a tentative truce between the two sides. The weapons were returned to them. Maggie suggests they stay put and wait for the Croats. Negan said. At that very moment, the marauders burst into the hall, and a fierce battle was about to erupt.